All right, and good morning, good morning. I think we're live. We're doing this remotely, so forgive me if we don't get this quite right. I'm going to turn this camera just a little bit. Um, Michelle, can you see if I'm live?
You are live.
All right, so I've the amazing innovation of this wonderful technology. Excuse me, that we have. So sorry. So I've actually got Michelle on FaceTime on my phone. She's got my computer, she's got my iPad, she's got all the other stuff. Anyway, so she's got my old iPad. So here we are. And good morning, everybody. But Michelle is not here. She is absolutely not sitting on my floor today. And I do miss her, although I can actually, when I look down there, I can actually see her, but on my phone. But
It's
we,
strange.
it is odd, but we decided a couple of days ago that it really is silly because to sort of have Michelle come to the house, especially because I've been so sick, and her husband works in a big place with lots of people, and so we decided that for safety's sake, plus she has her children at home, so it's good for her to be there to keep an eye on them because they're such naughty children, aren't they, Michelle? They're such naughty, naughty children. I don't know if you can hear Michelle, but she's here with us. So good morning, Michelle. I would like to say, first of all, good morning to Grey Eagle, my puppy. Yes, he's back in his corner. And good morning, Michelle.
Good morning, everyone.
All right, so let's see then how this works. It should work as usual, but you never know. But before we go with the show, I have a little personal thing to share with you. First of all, we are on a daily basis sending out healing to, we're using our Hands Around the World. We have a whole team of people who join with us, Hands Around the World. We were unfortunately not able to do it yesterday afternoon, but we should be back doing it every week from now on. Now we know how to do all of this remotely. And excuse me. And I do want to say to people once again, I know that this is an awful time, but as long as we take the best precautions we can, wear a mask if you go out into a store and there are lots of people, wash your hands on a regular basis. Many people are wearing gloves, cotton gloves, which is a very good idea, I think. Just protect yourselves, protect your children. I had a conversation with my daughter yesterday because she and her son, like many of you there, she's on lockdown, she's in New York City. But she does want to take her son out around the block and so on. They want to go for a walk, they want to get some fresh air and so on. And so I said, just make sure that he's wearing his mask and you're wearing your mask. So just be sensible and take precautions. And please, please, please try not to panic, would you? Please try not to panic, because the fear of all of this is more contagious, I think, than the disease itself. And excuse me. And so we are sending out healing. It is beginning to abate in certain areas, which is good news. Summer is coming, which is also good news, because there are many theories that this thing doesn't survive in warm weather. I think it's 72 degrees I last heard. Don't quote me, I'm not an expert on this, but there is some research showing that if it's a nice warm, dry, hot climate, etc., then this thing will sort of start to die off, and hopefully by next winter we shall definitely see the scientists, all of those wonderful people that we rely on so much in their laboratories, coming up with all these great things that we can use. We can rely on them. I'm sure they're working hard to figure it all out, and so my prayers go out to all of them too. So all of you people working furiously in your laboratories, please know that we do appreciate you. And I would also like to give a big shout out to all of those doctors and nurses who are still, despite everything, manning the hospitals, manning the, all of the stuff that they need to do. Many of the hospitals do not have enough masks for the nurses and doctors, so they are there at their own risk. However, please understand that this is, I think, a fact. 98% of all people who get this thing survive, they're fine, they recover. 98%. So I know it's scary, but I think more importantly, the fear that creates the panic, that creates us to do crazy things, I think the fear is far more infectious and dangerous than the disease itself. So my darlings, please, if you want to be on our healing book, just email me, rosemary@rosemaryaltea.com. Even though Michelle is not in the house, we do work remotely. She's dealing with all of your emails, and again, if you would like to be on my mailing list, you must request. Please put me on the mailing list, and we shall do that for you. And just keep checking to see what we're doing. Next week, we definitely, hopefully, all things being equal, we shall be doing our Wednesday healing sessions. Tonight, again, I haven't spoken to Al, but I think he's on board. We are having our Everything is Attitude show, which starts at 8 o'clock. Right, Michelle? Yes, 8 o'clock. And 8 until 9. And then for all of you out there who, my students, we will be having class tonight also. So, let's see. Oh, what else have I got to tell you? News. Now, I just want to mention my knitting because I'm very proud of what I've just finished yesterday. Right, I always knit 2 sweaters for my grandson for Christmas. This last year, however, what with one thing and another, one was finished and one was just started. However, then I got sick when I was in New York. Then I came home, and then I got sick again. I'm making all of these wonderful excuses as to why. Here we are, spring is just around the corner, and I'm going to show you my second winter sweater for my grandson. It will fit him next year, I'm pretty sure. And also on chilly spring days, he can wear it as well. Would you like to see it? Would you like to see it, Michelle?
Of course.
Do you think everybody else would like to see it?
I think everybody likes to see it.
Do you think so? All right then. Oh, you've twisted. Look, you've twisted my arm at my back. So I'm going to show you this beautiful sweater. Finally, ta-da, finished. There it is. I'm showing you all of it. Isn't that nice, that sweater? So, and I don't know if you can see the little bit of pattern in there. And can you believe my grandson is that big? He's really not. It's going to be long for him. But yes, he's getting bigger and bigger as we speak. So, all right. So, that done now. I'm sort of happy. Right. So, now that sweater happens to be his Easter gift, along with chocolates, Easter eggs, and all of that good stuff. Right. Michelle, do you have anything to say before we start? Do you want to say anything to anybody out there? I know you're dealing with a husband, you're dealing with 2 kids who are off school, teenagers who are off school. So it's got to be tough for you too. How are you managing, my love?
So far we're doing pretty good. I've actually got the youngest sitting at the table with me. She's working on her homework.
She's the naughty one, right?
She's the easy one.
She's my little Gwen.
My naughty one is probably in her room on her phone. And I just heard the door fling open, so she heard me.
Instead of doing homework, as she should be doing.
Actually, I think she was getting ready because she's going with her stepdad today, and they're going to go pick up another computer and, maybe a couple little essential things that we might need. But I think that we're pretty good on everything else.
Okay, all right. All right, so is there anybody there? Do we have anybody there?
We have about 8 or 9 people on.
Okay, good morning, everyone. It's so funny because every week we say, we had 8 people, 10 people, 20 people, whatever. And the minute we the minute we stop and you go into it, tells you how many views you've had and so on, 200, 300, 500, or whatever it is. So just because there don't seem to be many people necessarily in the chat room doesn't mean that there aren't lots of people watching. So good morning to all of you. All right, who's up first, Michelle? Do we have anyone wanting to say anything? Any comments? Anyone? Excuse me, I'm sorry about this coughing.
Well, Rosie's on and she says good morning.
Good morning, Rosie.
Chris is on and she says happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday, Chris. Good morning.
Dean is on.
Oh, good morning, Dean. You got your computer done? Good.
He said he got his illness back, but oh well, at least his ears can still hear this.
Oh, all right. Okay.
Megan's on. She said good morning.
Morning,
Prayers
Megan.
for our world.
Pardon?
She said good morning and prayers for our world. Are you hearing me okay?
Yeah, fine. Keep going.
Okay. Chris is on. She said you shared that we don't go before our time. After 9/11, people banded together to support each other. Is this virus part of the plan and a way to remind us that we're all connected?
Well, you know, I don't know that God sends us you know, disasters of one kind or another. I think that we create these disasters. I think the world often creates their own disasters. I mean, we really don't take very good care of our planet, do we? We often don't take care of our health. We don't necessarily take care of our diet. I mean, let's not point the finger anywhere. It's amazing to me. I've been sort of laughing on the one hand, but extremely sad on the other hand, for all the finger pointing towards the politicians. They're not doing enough. They didn't do it soon enough. Well, they're doing it now, but they should have done it. For goodness sake, people, stop pointing the finger. Instead, take a look at your own selves. You look at your own diet. You look at your own cleanliness. Take a look at the places that you go to, that you take your family to. Are they clean? Are they hygienic? Are they? I mean, we're responsible for our own selves. So let's not say, you know, oh, God delivered this thing so that we could all sort of, you know, become aware of our need for each other. However, through disasters, you know, there's this amazing poem, and I encourage all of you, after watching this show, of course, to go on Google. Some of you might already know it. The poem is by Rudyard Kipling, and it's simply called If. And this poem begins when all about you, if when all about you, what is it? Let me do it again, sorry. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs. And the poem goes on and on. I do think somewhere Shakespeare might have used something similar, but I will actually say that Rudyard Kipling wrote this poem, and it's his, and so other people have used it from time to time in different ways. But my advice to all of you is, you know, you've got nothing better to do, a lot of you, have you? You're working from home, or many of you have lost your jobs, or your jobs are on hold. So while you have the time, and you know, sort of, if you can Google the poem If by Rudyard, Rudyard, Rudyard Kipling, Kipling, couldn't spell it for a minute. The poem If is so inspirational, and it really does begin, if you can keep your head when all about are losing theirs. In other words, if you can stay sane, if you can stay sensible, then, as Chris has said, the world would be a better place, because we'd all sort of take a step back and start to think, just start to think sensibly. The biggest contagion that we have in this world today is the contagion of fear. Fear creates panic. The neighbor panics, the next neighbor panics. People panic it. It's a little bit like, I was thinking the other day, how lynch mobs and worked. It's sort of like almost like it's a mob mentality, and that people used to lynch people. People who were normally quiet, nice, good people would find themselves encouraged by the mob, panicked by everyone else, would do things and become somebody that they ordinarily wouldn't do and wouldn't become. And so that is my worry. That is my fear. When people go about looting and because other people are experiencing hardships, I think all looters of any kind, honestly, should be put in prison for eternity, or at least for 2 or 3 years. They should be made to learn. I'm a great one for the punishment fits the crime. And unfortunately, again, in our world, we talk about contagions and pandemics, and look at the criminal stuff that goes on, and look at the ridiculous punishments that there are out there. Some people are punished severely for nothing, and others get away with, depending on how much money they have and how many lawyers they can afford, they get away with it. I mean, I learned a long time ago that there is really very little justice in this world, I'm sorry to say. The word justice means sort of to have the injustice repaired or made whole. And how often does that happen? Almost never. We are responsible for our own selves. If we do the right thing, as far as this this pandemic is concerned, if we stay clean, we do what we're told to do, we don't go out unless it's absolutely necessary, we keep our families safe, etc., we do all that we can do. And I firmly believe that we do not go before our time. We cannot go before our time. So, but also we don't want to get sick in the meantime, do we? But also, I think Chris brings up a good point in that. Is this an opportunity for us to join together in the world and to be inspiration for each other, and to not panic, and to reach out a helping hand? And that doesn't mean necessarily going into a crowd or putting yourself at risk. My daughter was complaining the other day she was going stir crazy, and I said, yes, but think how it used to be during the war, and think of how it used to be for people who are isolated, completely isolated, where there are no phones. Think about the times when we did not have cell phones. She hates it when I start looking at all the good stuff, but we can do this show. You don't have to touch me, I don't have to touch you, but I'm touching you with my heart. There are ways that we can communicate with our loved ones. I've heard of grandmothers driving along the roads waving to their grandchildren in the house. Get on Skype, get on Facebook has a community thing. Get on what we're doing now, which is YouTube or FaceTime or what have you. You don't have to be without them. My daughter and grandson live in New York. We talk every day, at least twice a day, if not 3 times or 4 times a day. Reese will often call me when he's having dinner. He called me yesterday to say, will you watch the baking show with me? And he puts the baking show on, and he props his iPad up on the sofa, so he thinks I can see what's on the TV, which I actually can't. But the joy is I can listen to him. What do you think to that, Mosey? And I'll say, well, because I can't see it, what do you think to it? And I like this person. Who do you like? We have conversations. I sit on the sofa with him, albeit I'm on the phone or an iPad or something. We communicate. So please, think in those terms. Think of the things that you can do rather than the things that you can't do. It will cheer you up. It will make you feel better. I've gone on and on, haven't I, Michelle? Let's move on. Let's
I mean,
move on
we
to the
don't
next.
have a ton going on.
Sorry?
We don't have a ton of things going on. We have Mary who's got some comments and a question.
Who is this?
Mary.
Yeah, good morning, Mary.
She said, Rosemary, it's nice to see you're doing better. It's more of a blessing to hear your healing words and advice.
Good.
She said that his sweater is outstanding and happy Easter.
I know, thank you.
And then her question is, the kids and I may go out for a hike today. Does Spirits or Grey Eagle have any advice for myself or my children?
Yeah, stay away from the crowds. Enjoy the fresh air. Don't go anywhere where, where there's a suspicion that you're going to be in amongst crowds and other people and so on. And just live in the moment. Here's the thing, everyone. Not that I'm not saying this is going to happen, but a bomb could drop and we could disappear in a heartbeat as I'm talking to you. Boom, it could happen. We all know that. We've grown up with that, since I don't know if most of you, if you don't remember, I don't remember it, but of course I've heard of it. I've seen all the footage on the Hiroshima and all of that. Dreadful things can happen to us. Don't blame God, please, because it's man-made, and we allow so much to go by us without stopping and saying, no, that's not right. And if we do that in the early stages in a good way, in a positive way, we can usually stop bad things from happening, certainly in our own personal space. But go out, thoroughly enjoy yourselves. If you are going to, you think you're going to be in a place where there are lots of other people, wear masks, wear gloves, wash your hands. I actually was out the other day, and I came home, I stripped off, put my clothes in the laundry, went under the shower, and I was fine. So just make sure you're sensible, and please have fun. Why don't you take a picnic with you? Make a real day of it. That would be fun too, Mary. I really hope you're going to enjoy the day. I don't know where you live, but I hope wherever it is, it's at least a mild day, if not a bit chilly. Here, of course, in Florida, we rarely experience chilly days, right, Michelle? Although we have had a few.
It's gorgeous right now.
I know, it's beautiful. I don't know what the temperature is, but the breezes, I've got all of my doors out the back, they're all wide open. I've got these huge big sliding doors looking out onto the lake, and they're all open and the breeze is coming in. It's really great. So all right, so
the 80s.
Sorry,
it's in the 80s today.
Oh, is it? But it's not hot, is it?
No,
it's actually not hot, because we've got all these wonderful West Coast breezes that we have here. I should say, you know what I mean. Anyway, let's have another question or a comment.
Well, Chris said that it's a very sharp looking sweater and that it's a great color. Kitty said it's beautiful and good morning.
Good morning, Kitty.
And the only thing I have to add to what you were saying is just be careful if you're going to wear gloves all the time, because by touching stuff, you're contaminating your gloves, so you need to make sure you're changing those too.
Oh, that's a really good point. Was it you who saw someone in the airport the other day?
Yes.
Wearing gloves.
And a mask.
Using their cell phone, putting their cell phone down on the counter, then picking it up. Down on the counter, picking it up, putting it to his face, pulling his mask down, talking on the phone. What's the point in protecting yourself if you're not going to protect yourself? So just please, everyone, use a little bit of common sense. All right, let's have another comment or question, Michelle.
As of right now, we are all caught up. I think everybody's just trying to see how this whole weird pandemic is going to turn out.
Do you think then that we can go now, that we only need to do half an hour of this show? You know the rules, everyone. You either comment or join in, or we quit. But so I'm just trying to think. I know that Dean would like a story. I can't think of one. Oh yes, I can. Yeah, I'll tell you. I'm going to tell you a story. It just came to me. Thank you, Grey Eagle, because he plopped it into my head here. So, uh, in uh, in on the outskirts of the city of Leicester, where I was born and raised. That's in England. Everyone, unless you didn't guess with the accent. There was a children's home,
You run that out.
and a friend of mine had a daughter who was in this place. When I say a children's home, it was really more like a hospital, sort of a home stroke hospital. And all of the patients were children, and every one of them was, let's say, an impossible case, if there is such a thing as an impossible case. Now, I've told this story before, but I would like, please, to put things a little bit in perspective. So, this was in the early days. I'd not been working as a spiritual medium for that long, maybe a year or two, and I'd just started the healing organization and one thing and another. Anyway, this friend of mine asked if I would go to the hospital to see her daughter, who lived at this hospital all the time because she was born severely brain damaged, and her name was Lorna. And my daughter, who was then 15 years old, 14 maybe, she might have been a bit younger, asked if she could come with us. And I said, I don't think so, darling, because I don't think it's the place you really should be. I was trying to protect her because I knew that she would see a lot of things in that hospital that were not nice to see. And to be honest, I was nervous about doing it myself. Anyway, she said, I'll be fine, I'll be fine. And so, against my better judgment, I let her come with us. And sure enough, there were some very, very sad and very awful sights. And at one point, my friend went off to talk to the nurses and to the doctor who was in the place. Samantha was fine. She was they had a big lounge where a lot of the kids sat and played and so on. And so I went wandering off, and I went into this ward. It was dark in there, very dark. And what drew me was I could hear a child crying. It wasn't quite a cry, it was almost like a cat loudly mewling. And it just went on and on. And I could hear this sound, and it just drew me. And the ward, it was a big ward, and there were lots of beds, and every child that was in those beds, every single child had been severely deformed, major birth defects. And so I headed towards this, all you could see in the beds were these sort of little mounds where these kids were. And I was drawn to this one little child, the teeniest little thing. I learned later that he was 4 years old, but he didn't look much more than a few months old. He was so tiny. And he was making this sound the whole time, continually in distress. I remember standing by his bedside, and I lifted his tiny hand, which was so dry like parchment because he was severely dehydrated. It turned out that this child was born blind. No one knew whether, and he couldn't speak. He was sort of in a real state. The biggest issue for him was that he had massive hearing issues. His hearing was so acute that even the tiniest pinprick would sound like a drum in his head. Now remember, I learned this later. His name was Jonathan. Now, I'm going back here an awfully long time. I'm going back at least 40 years, 35 to 40 years. But I still remember this little boy, and I still remember his name. I still remember lifting my finger, and he sort of tried to clutch my finger. And I was standing there, sending him healing, sending a prayer, and all the time he was making this dreadful, very pathetic sound. And at some point, for some reason or another, I started to sing. Very quietly, very softly, I started to sing. And this little boy turned his head, because until this point he'd just laid there, couldn't see anyway, wasn't paying any attention to me much. But when I started to sing, he turned his head, and for the first time he was silent, and you could see that he was listening really attentively. And I just was so softly and so gently singing, and I think I stood there for more than an hour, giving him healing, singing to him, and eventually a nurse came and said, your friend's looking for you. You have to leave. I did not want to leave Jonathan. Now, a lot of these kids in this particular ward of the hospital, their parents had abandoned them. But as I was going out, I was saying to the nurse, does he have anyone to come visit him? Because I thought, if not, that's my job. And she said he has very loving parents, and they come very often to see him. They come at least 2 or 3 times a week to see him. But she said, nobody's ever been able to stop him making that sound until you, and you are the first. So I said, well, maybe now his parents might know what to do. If you sing softly to him, maybe that's the thing. And she thanked me, and she gave me a hug, and I went back out into the waiting room, and I sat on the sofa. And there is another story in here, but that's my story for today. If nobody talks, maybe I'll tell the rest of the story, but let's hear your comments. Anybody got a question or a comment? I still think of Jonathan. I know that he will never, certainly has, he probably way gone by now. But you know, there are children all over the world who are suffering for one reason or another. Instead of panicking about what is happening to us, maybe we could focus a little bit on what we might be able to do for those kids who, and especially for the children, because I'm a kid person, but especially for those children who have no one to take care of them, no one to worry if they get a virus, or if they get a cold, or if they're cold and hungry. There are so many people, so many kids out there who need our help and need our prayers, who are going through such trauma and difficulty. So if we could sort of focus our attention on those who are more needed than ourselves, and count our blessings for what we do have, and for the fact that, you know, we do have families who care about us, and we do have friends who are concerned and so on. If we could focus on that, maybe the panic would be less. Do we have anyone commenting? Michelle, anyone?
We're actually having some technical difficulties. It has just kicked me out of the chat room.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I'm trying to look it up to see if I can get it on the phone.
Okay.
To see if I can see what's going on with the chat room.
Michelle is out of the chat room right now, but that doesn't mean that we can't still talk while she tries to get back in. I'm wondering if there are too many computers going in your house. Maybe there's, you know, maybe the...
Well, most of us aren't even connected to the Wi-Fi because I have your stuff going.
Okay, well, then while you get up, let me know when you're up then again, and because she can't see your questions. You can hear me, I know, but she can't see questions and she can't see your comments. While she tries to get back in there, I will tell you the rest of the story. So when I left Jonathan, I went and I sat in the waiting room, and many of you have heard this story, and it does not show me in a good light at all, but that's all right, because so many people think that I'm that all-knowing, all-seeing and wonderful person, and this will show you that I am not so great sometimes, which means I'm human. So I'm sitting on the sofa. My daughter is off somewhere or another with one of the nurses and sort of having a good look round, not at all affected in the way that I am by what is going on here, because I was deeply affected by the things that I saw. I was deeply affected by Jonathan, but I was also nervous about, the kids who were in the lounge area. I mean, when I say they were playing, what I really mean is the nurses were sitting with them, sometimes reading to them, whether or not they could understand. The majority of the kids had some major birth defects. And there was a little boy. I'm sitting on the sofa and I'm trying now not to look, and I'm thinking about Jonathan, and I'm upset about Jonathan, and I'm trying sort of to not get too involved in what's going on, because I know that I would just crumble into a quivering little nothing, no good for anybody. So I'm just sitting there, and along comes a little boy. Now I say along comes a little boy, he must have been 8 or 10 years old, I'm going to say. And God, if God intended to do a number on this kid, and I'm sure he didn't, but boy, you couldn't have wished for a stranger looking child. His legs were crossed at an unnatural angle, but he was able to slide on his bottom. His arms were also at unnatural angles, and he could just barely move them. His face, he had a long face, but it was actually lopsided. So his mouth was here. His nose was somewhere off center. And he was drooling. To top it all, he had carrot hair, red hair, that stuck out at weird angles all over his head. And he was an ugly little thing. So he came up to me, and he's wearing pajamas, a jacket, buttons down the front. He's wearing these pajamas, and he's making these awful sounds, and he's sort of obviously wanting my attention. He's sitting right in front of me on the floor, making these weird sounds. And then at some point, he's able to get to his little finger, and he gets it in the buttons of his pajama jacket, and he yanks it, and his pajama jacket flies open. And he then makes more weird noises. At the same time, he's drooling, he's so I pretend can't see, because the last thing I want to do is to interact. The truth is, I was afraid. I was, as many of us are, I was afraid to recognize anything about this child. I thought, if I ignore him, he'll go away. He'll just go away. So at this point, a nurse came along and did up his pajama jacket. And so the next thing, he does the same thing again. He yanks his jacket open, and he's making these really weird sounds. And the nurse goes behind me. She walks behind me, and in a very sort of, she obviously didn't think much of me because I was pretending to ignore the whole thing. She said, "If you just do up his pajama jacket, dear, he'll leave you alone." Well, that shamed me, didn't it? And I deserve to be shamed, but I do understand why so many people are afraid of something that is not considered what we consider normal. So I very tentatively reach forward, and all this slobbers all over him, and I did up his pajama jacket, and I sat back and I thought, now he'll go away, now he'll go away. And the next thing, he put his finger in his jacket again, and he yanked, and he started making all of these noises. And for the first time, I really looked at him, and I realized that he was actually laughing, and his eyes were twinkling, and he had obviously the most terrific sense of humor. And I hadn't seen it because I hadn't looked, because I'd been afraid to look too closely. I realized he was laughing, and I looked at him. For the first time, I saw a little boy. Yes, he had awful, awful deformities. Was he ugly? Absolutely, on the outside, one of the ugliest kids I've ever seen. But what a beautiful and gorgeous looking kid he was on the inside, for all of that was going on, for all of the difficulties that he had. He was laughing. He was finding humor in what was otherwise the most appalling situation. So I leaned forward, and for the first time I looked in his eyes, and I smiled at him, and I said, so this is a game, right? And I did up his pajama jacket, and I laughed. And he laughed, and his eyes met mine, and they were twinkling and full of humor. And yes, you guessed it, he got his finger in his jacket and he yanked again. And we sat there playing Let's Undo and Do Up the Pajama Jacket. It was all he could do to move one finger. It was the only thing he could do, but he found a way to do it. Now, the majority of us, we can do so much more, can't we? So can we use that again as a reason why we should want to try to find all of those things that we can do? Like Mary's taking her kids for a hike, like my daughter's taking her son around the block, probably on his skateboard. Let's concentrate on the things that we can do. Yesterday, Samantha had a cooking time with Reese. He loves to cook, which is why he was then watching the season 4 of the baking show, he told me. So can we find the things that we can do and look at the joy? I mean, that little boy was so deformed physically, but one of the healthiest children I've ever met spiritually. He was beautiful. So if we can look past what we're afraid of and see what we can find the joy in. Are you fixed up yet, Michelle?
Kind of. I mean, I can see the comments on my phone.
Okay, let's go then.
But I mean, there hasn't been any more comments, so I don't have anything else to say.
Oh, is that it then? All right, well, then.
You know that the minute you try to close, everybody and their brother's going to ask.
Well,
that's okay.
I was about to close. So if you do have any comments or questions, now is the time, because we're doing this remotely, and it seems to be working okay. Unfortunately, I don't know why it's cut you out. Were you using my computer then?
Yeah, I was on the laptop, and
Okay.
it just all of a sudden it said chat is no longer available, chat disconnected, chat reconnected, chat disconnected, and the screen went blank.
It's obviously your internet's having issues. All right, so anyone got a comment? Anyone got any questions? Anyone have a comment about what I just said? Dean, I just told you 2 stories. Now come on, you should have at least one comment going on there. How's it going, Michelle? No one else?
There's not anything. I mean,
maybe
I'm looking on my phone to check your comments, and I'm not even connected to the internet on my phone.
Well, maybe then
it's
people
nothing.
Maybe then people are commenting and we're not getting them, or maybe other people are having difficulties as well. So
Let's run over the email real quick and see if there's something in there.
Okay.
Okay. We do have a question from Susan.
Yes.
She says, I joined a workshop recently with a well-known TV personality from the Travel Channel. She led a group of us through a guided meditation to open ourselves, and then warned if we don't do that meditation at least once a week thereafter, quote unquote bad things. I'm not going to use the words that she used. Bad things happen to us.
What?
I'm second guessing even doing it now. I'm afraid of doing it and what it will open to me too. Do you recommend that I stop or continue?
Stop.
What do you make of any of this?
Stop.
Thank you.
Stop. I don't know who you're seeing or who's teaching you. No teacher worth their salt would say any such thing. Don't be afraid of your meditation. I always say to my students though, please, have a timer next to you and, time it 15 minutes and you're done. There's no need for hours and hours of meditation, unless of course you have been doing this for years and you're proficient at it and you know what you're doing. I just had a text from Chris who said that the chat room system seems to be down.
Well, I just got one from Wendy too, telling me that they're trying to comment that they can't.
Oh. Well, this is what I'm going to suggest then. I want you all to save those comments. You can either send them in an email and we shall save your comments and your questions, send them in an email to us. We'll do our best next week to answer them. We hope that we don't have this problem every time, but at least you can see me all right and you can hear me.
It's not my internet.
It's not the internet?
It's not my internet, it's YouTube.
So YouTube is, probably what it is that everybody's home and so everybody's on YouTube and they're probably sort of about to crash or whatever that is. But anyway, we'll try and get it fixed for next time. If not, we'll find a way that you can comment maybe on Messenger or something. I'm thinking, I don't know.
We can do that too. I mean,
so
we'll open up different avenues.
So we'll see what we can come up with. What I really mean by that is Michelle will see what she can come up with. Because as we discussed this morning, Michelle, I am not technologically minded and I don't want to learn. I'm sorry about that, but my daughter actually used to call me a dinosaur. And she used to warn me, one day, if you don't learn to use the all that stuff, you're going to be left behind. Now, I'm not as bad as all that, right, Michelle? I was able to set up YouTube this morning. I just had one tiny stumbling block, but everything else I was able to do. I thought that was pretty good of me. So anyway, so I can't remember what the stumbling block was now. I can't remember. But anyway, it doesn't matter because here we are. I'm so sorry that you can't all join in with me. I hope you did enjoy my stories. Both of those stories, well, I'm not sure about the story about Jonathan, but the story about the young boy, I never knew his name, but the story about the young Carrot Top, who was one of the most, without a doubt, one of the most beautiful children I've ever seen, ever. Ugly on the outside and absolutely beautiful. Can you imagine having all of that, being born in that way, and yet the sense of humor and his twinkling? Can you imagine? It's almost impossible for us, isn't it? So please take those inspirational stories and use them, and don't be afraid. Don't let panic drive you. Step back, think of the things that you can do. Mary, I really do hope that you have a really great hike, and stay away from the crowds, as I've said. Take a picnic. I mean, you can't go on a hike. When I was a kid, we had lots of summer holidays. My mother was working all the time. She worked in a carbon factory. She used to stand on her feet in a cold concrete factory and fold carbon paper. That was her job. And she didn't actually need to work, but she worked because she wanted all the fine things. She wanted the brigade curtains, she wanted the Persian rugs, she wanted her holidays abroad, and good for her, she worked hard to get those things that she wanted. But in the meantime, we as kids, we were left to our own devices, and through the summertime, we would, if we could find any biscuits, or as the Americans say, cookies, in the house, which were not always there. Custard creams were the thing. We'd put 2 each in our pockets, and off we'd go walking. We'd walk for hours and hours, not particularly going anywhere, but making it up, making up stories, pretending we were going here, there, or somewhere or another. And we used to have a blast. And we, sort of come home sometime in the late afternoon, hungry, and make ourselves a jam sandwich, because that was what life was all about in those days. So, all right, so we shall be back next week. We hope to get the glitches sorted out. We hope you've enjoyed your time with us today. And
we could always do the Spirit World on Facebook next week if we're having a problem too.
Yeah, we'll let you all know what it is that we're doing. But we'll try to fix the glitches as much as we can. In the meantime, remember tonight at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, I shall be with Al Pisano. We'll be obviously talking about what's going on in the world and trying to figure out some, inspiration and help and so on. We should be back here again next Thursday morning. We'll let you know whether it's on YouTube or Facebook or wherever it is. And we'll hopefully have sorted out the glitches. We'll be back on Wednesday with our Healing Hands Around the World, Wednesday afternoons at 1:30 Eastern Standard Time. Again, if you want to know more about us, if you want to know more about what we're doing, email us, Rosemary at Rosemary Altair. We do, however, have a little bit of great news. Is it tomorrow? iTunes.
If everything continues to go the way it's supposed to, yes, it will be released tomorrow.
Our first book, which is
meditation CD.
Our first meditation CD, which is
A Journey Towards Healing.
A Journey Towards Healing. You'll be able to get it on iTunes or any of those, Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, Google. Wherever you find those things, you'll be able to get it. It'll be up there hopefully tomorrow. If not tomorrow, then look for it over the weekend. We are going to be releasing all 5 of the meditations. We're also going to be doing, our books, which are now on CD. We're going to be trying those out at some point down the road as well. We're also, Michelle, while she's at home, is going to be furiously trying to work on getting our conference calls.
Your webpage will be up soon.
The webinar page. The webinar page, all of that stuff. She's working on all of that. So in the meantime, thank you all for listening. I'm sorry that the chat room broke down. I hope you liked my stories. I hope you've been inspired by them, as I have been, certainly with Jonathan's story, for more than 35 years. See how old I am. Oh my gosh. Anyway.
Okay. Susan said thank you so much for answering her question.
My pleasure. And please, 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 all of you.
And here's all your people emailing me to let me know what the heck was going on with YouTube, that they're trying, but they can't get through.
Take those things and email all of your comments and questions. We don't want them to slide by us. We'd like to answer the best we can, so we'll do that next week. So email us, rosemary@rosemaryaltair.com. In the meantime, that's it. We are done for today. Thank you all of you for listening. Thank you for your wonderful comments. We know that they're coming in. And please, again, remember, the biggest contagion we have to fear is fear itself. Fear creates panic. Panic is contagious. Let's not worry. Remember the poem, Rudyard Kipling, If.
Maybe I'll include that in the email today.
Yeah, I'm probably going to, I meant to pull it up and read it, but I'd like to read it to you all maybe next week. If, when all about you if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs. So I'll do that again. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs, keep your feet on the ground, be sensible, take a breath. There you go. And you can't go before it's your time anyway, so how about that? Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you again next week. Um, in the meantime, please, please, please have a very, very, very blessed rest of the day and a very blessed weekend. I've now got to figure out how to switch this off, and I think it's in the top. There it is. You see my finger up there, right? There we go. And if only I could see. There we go, end.